to today's share from Rabbi Yakov Zev, Smith Shlita, on the topic of early Shachris, Davening Vasikin. I'd like to give a big shekher to Rabbi Simcha Cohen for sponsoring today's share, Lina Nishmas Imoy, Yisha Rezel Bas, from Nosan Alevi, Aleh Shalom Yotze Bei Shvat. Today's share is also learned Lina Nishmas, Yisha Miriam Brindel Bas Sora, Aleh Shalom, Kol D'Shloishim. Marav Smith Shlita.
Recently someone had to catch an early flight and he looked into the options about davening early morning and he was overwhelmed. There's an early minyan, an earlier minyan, and some put on tefillin and talis during davening, some put on before davening, and he wanted to know a little bit about that. And the truth is, we had a shayla in yeshiva where a bacha woke up early one morning. He had to go to a bris in Lakewood, and bachim are not particularly into getting up early, and he didn't know what to do. We say brachas, brachas hashacha, brachas hatayra, and the truth is, this sugya of being up early and how to dealing with that is a huge sugya. It spans the entire Arachayim, putting on talis and tefillin, brachas, brachas hatayra, krishma, birchas krishma, Purim, it's negeya to an early shaifa, mila, and I realize that it's kedai to talk about the earliest time to daven for mitzvahs. I just heard a fascinating shayla where someone lives here in Brooklyn, and this has become more typical. He works in Eretz Yisrael. In other words, he works for a firm, an Eretz Yisrael firm, on phone and on a computer, and his work day is from 3 a.m. until 10 a.m., which in Eretz Yisrael is prime time. And he has an hour off. I can't call it for a lunch break. I don't know what to call it, but he has an hour off to daven. When should he daven? Here he's talking about working hours before davening. He's allowed to do that. When does he have to break for davening? We'll soon see it's not so pashut. But basically, this is the sugya. This is the time to talk about it. In the past week plus, tomorrow also, the netz is the earliest that it will be, and the latest that it will be. The netz is 7:20. That means ideally one shouldn't be davening before 7:20. And yet there are many minyanim that are davening before 7:20. So we'll try today to discuss this, and even if you're not an early bird, but again, the yisaidis are really negeya to all mitzvahs. As our derech always is Bez Hashem, to try to find one yisaid, I think we have to reduce it to a simple question. What is the beginning of the day al pi halacha? What is the halachic start of the day? So a person impulsive, he says, that's an easy question. From netz to shkia, that's when day is, right? So I say, it's basically right, but there are two mistakes. It's not netz and it's not shkia. I like to be positive, so, try to find some positive, but it's both are wrong. Because the day does not begin by netz and the day does not end by shkia. How do I know? It's basically a Mishnah. The Mishnah Megillah Daf Chavav talks about various mitzvahs. And the Mishnah basically says, Ein Karin Es HaMegillah, you can't lay in the Megillah, V'lai Malin, there's no Mila, V'lai Toivlin, and a few other examples. Ad Shetonei Tzachama, until Netz Hachama. Then the Mishnah immediately adds, V'kula, on all of these mitzvahs, that really just said this man is Netz Hachama, if you did it Amoid HaShacha, which is at least 72 minutes earlier, you were Yoitze. Now we look at it and we say, make up your mind. When does the day begin? First you said Netz Hachama. Okay, fair enough, 7:20. Then you said Amoid HaShacha, and Alois HaShacha, Amoid HaShacha are basically the same. And again, we'll soon see the details, but it's at least 72 minutes earlier. So, is it a netz or is it a lois? Make up your mind. So you look at the Gemara, Daf Chaf Amud Beis in Megillah. The Gemara learns it from a pasuk in the Navi, where the pasuk says that they did malacha. Me'alois hashacha ad seis hakechavim. They did malacha the entire day, and the Gemara describes the day as amoid hashacha until tzeis. Therefore, the Gemara understood that the halachic day begins by alois and ends by tzeis. Not netz to shkia, but alois until tzeis hakechav. Azoi steht in the Gemara. So that sounds very good. The day begins with Alois, and again, today's Alois, at least one of the Alois in is 607. So why can't I daven, and why can't I lein Megillah? Why can't I have a bris milah at 607 if that's Yom? So Rashi on the Mishnah, Megillah, and also the Balamor, the Mechemes, and other Rishonim say that really Alois HaShacha is really daybreak. And that's the new day. But the fisha ain't called Bekiyim boy, Tzrichan Lahamden Adonetz. Really, the day begins by Alois. But in those days, they didn't have such watches that we have with precision. They didn't have atomic time and radio time. And people, Pashit, were not aware of the right time. And don't forget, Alois HaShacha is still quite dark. And if you do a mitzvah before Alois, you're zicha not yoytza. So how can we take a chance? So therefore Chazal made this buffer zone. Wait for nets. Nets are ready. It's fairly light outside. So you can't go wrong. So really this man for all mitzvahs is Alois. But says Rashi and the Ramban in the beginning of Brachas and the Rav and Mishnah says as well, it's basically a protection not to do it too early. Is reason Magdima Lemitzvahs, do it by Alois al Zrizin. The answer Chazal knew better. Do it Zriza Magdimin by nets. So we see there are two important Yesodis from this Gemara. Number one, the day begins by Alois, and mitzvahs that are done not before nets. Now the word we say nets, actually the Ramos says in Nun Ches in the beginning, it's based on a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Heinetzu Harimoinim, and technically the right word is honetz. It's not the hey is not a prefix, but that's part of the word. But the Welt says nets, and Soich Ami and Noichiyoshe will say nets. But basically, Alois is the day, and nets is the time for mitzvahs. Now, what exactly is nets and Alois? So I want to be very, very clear. I want to be Maisa Meidah. The Zmanim can be very confusing, and some people have a mental block. When they hear the Zayin of Zmanim, they shut off. But today, we're not going to be confusing. If you came to get confused, you'll have to go elsewhere. Not here, not today. It's really not negeya to understand how the Zmanim works, but very, very briefly, all you have to know, and this is simple, when it's dark for us here in Brooklyn, it doesn't mean that the sun closed off and out of business. The sun is working 24/7. The sun at night is illuminating other parts of the world. Okay? Now, I'm going to use this tissue as the sun. When the sun is kechayim hayayim, it's like this. We all enjoy the sun. You want to get a suntan. The sun is brilliant. But the sun doesn't just all of a sudden pop up. The sun rises. Now, the sun is here now, below the horizon, and you don't see the sun, right? This is the sun. But the sun is so brilliant, when it starts to rise, you could already feel the rays of dawn. By Pasha, you're seeing a little bit of light. You don't see the sun, but since the sun is so brilliant, even though the sun is totally covered by the horizon, you know the sun is rising. So the word Alois HaShacha is the rays of dawn are appearing. It's called daybreak, some people call it crack of dawn, but it means the sun did not yet rise as far as we could see it. But you know the sun is on the way, and you could see the first rays of dawn. Alois HaShacha is when you see the light but not the sun. When the sun rises a little more considerably, and you could see the actual sun, not the entire sun, but you could see the actual sun, that's called Netz HaChama. In English, that's called sunrise. The Bialach in the beginning of Siman Nun Ches says, when you could see the Chama, Mascheles, the Snoitzes Al HaOilam. And that's basically all you have to know. The day starts by Alois, when you could see the rays of the sun, you could feel the rays of the sun. Alois, the nets, you could actually see the sun. And that's why you'll look in Halacha, in a few places, you'll see this Yisod. I'll give you 3 examples. In Tav Kuf Peiches, we once heard the Shaila, someone had to be in the hospital Rosh Hashanah morning, and he wanted to blow shayfa for himself before. What's the earliest time to blow shayfa? Again, B'shas Adchaka, because he can't go to shul. So in the beginning of Tav Kuf Peiches, the Mechaber says, the Zman is not at night, you have to dafka b'yoyim, and you should do it after nets. But if you blew Ma'bayda Shacha, you yoitza. Why you yoitza? Pashit, because it's day. The same is true in Taf Reish Nun Beis regarding Dalad Minim, that this man you have to do it by Yom, and ideally Netzach Chama, but if there's an Einis or whatever it is, you could do it by Alois Sashach. And in Yeredeya, in the beginning of Reish Samach Beis, there you see the halachas of Mila. Mila is the same thing, by Yom HaShmini. We wait till Netz, ideally, but if you did it, Me'amoid HaShacha, you yoitz. Now, we just had the Moshel, Tainus. Tainus is our B'Tevis. People wanted to eat before the Tainus, because the Tainus began quite late. When does the Tainus begin? In other words, when can I eat until? So it's totally in Alois. The day begins by Alois. So Asar B'Tevis begins by Alois, and therefore before Alois, we'll soon see a half hour before Alois, we're going to have a Suda. But this is basically the Yesod. Now I think we have enough information, hopefully enough clarity, and we'll try to organize it, Pashit al Pi the Seder Hayoim. The first question that people encounter, especially this time of the year, when Alois is pretty late, it's the latest that it is. Again, in the Luach, it gives Alois as 6:07, so you could have probably thousands of Yidden, Kanainar, Ken Yerbu, that are up learning an hour before Alois. They're learning 5 o'clock in the morning. I've had the Shaila more than once. People wake up 5 o'clock and they have to learn an hour or two and daven, and they push it feel weak. Could you have breakfast at 5 o'clock in the morning? I mean, breakfast, you wash and you bench, and gesunte breakfast. So, Bemis, we know, besides the general issa of eating before a mitzvah, before Ner Chanukah, before B'dikas Chametz, there's a specific issa, a very chamadik issa of eating before davening. The Gemara learns it out in Masech the Brachas, that viewed from 2 psukim, that it's gaiva to eat before davening. Like soichlu al adam, like yispalu kodim, like soichlu kodim she yispalu al dimchem. In fact, the Minchas Chinuch considers maybe it's issa deraisa, since it's based on a pasuk. But lamaisa, there is an issa chama, and this is in Shulchan Aruch Pei Tes Siv Gimel, not to eat before davening. When does this issa apply? So almost all the paiskim, except for the Taz, but the Misharatzian and Peites Yudal says all the paiskim say the issa begins by Alois. Why does it begin by Alois? It's very pashut. That's when the day starts. The Taz is shtickle mekel, since you could really supposed to daven by nets, so it's later. But the paiskim rejected the Taz, and that's the minig ha'olam. Zok the Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot and Ches, that this man begins on Moed HaShacha, Alois HaShacha, because that's the beginning of the day. The Shulchan Aruch in Sif Hey says even if you started before Alois, but once Alois came, you have to stop eating. So that would mean today at 6:07, we'll soon see there's the early Alois is 5:52, but in that range you have to stop eating. The Paiskim say, Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot and Chavzayim, based on a Hilchas Lulav Taf Reish Nun Beis Sif Beis, that if you want to have a Suda or you want to have an Achilas Keva, you have to start a half hour before Alois. You're allowed to eat a snack, a coffee, a banana, a cereal, some cornflakes, but to start having more than a kebeya, you have to start a half hour before Alois. So that would mean that if someone wants to eat lechatchila tomorrow morning, so he starts at 5 o'clock, there's no shaila whatsoever. Why? Because that's a half hour before any Alois, and he's safe. Now the person might feel a little guilty, but I'm eating before davening. 5 o'clock, I'm eating before davening. So the answer al pi halacha is you're not eating before Shachris, you're eating after Ma'ariv. Because 5 o'clock is not early morning. 5 o'clock is late at night. The day begins by Alois, not before. So 5 o'clock is a little after Shachris, a little after Ma'ariv. I mean, a lot after Ma'ariv, but it's not an Nageya. You're eating late at night, you're not eating early morning. Now, although the Zohar Kodesh writes not to eat before davening, even if you went to sleep and woke up, but the Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot and Chav Ches and the Yismach Moshe and the Tshuvas Heishav Moshe, Sim and Vav, both say emphatically that if you need it for Avodas Hashem, for learning, for davening, then you're allowed to eat. And the Zohar is only talking about a person that's eating just for the taiva of it, but if you're eating it for Avodas Hashem, for learning and davening, you could eat lechatchila before the Alois or a half hour before the Alois. Now, someone asked an interesting question that deserves to be mentioned. Why can I eat even after Alois? And I'll make a shayma. A shayma will remind me, don't forget to daven. Or I have a minyan kavua. we eat supper, whenever time you eat supper, and you daven Ma'ariv after you share at night. What's that to eat before Ma'ariv? Ma'ariv is a Krishma Deraisa. So the Pais can say either you have a minyan kavua, when you daven every night after the share, or you have a shoima, or both. So if it works for Ma'ariv, why doesn't it work for Shachris? The teretz is very posh. Shachris, besides the general list of eating before a mitzvah, which a shoima or minyan kavua helps, there's also the Muhammadic issa of Leisaychlu, Kaidim Shispalu al Dimchem. Lachashin is go as the Gemara, you come and you daven. For that, no shoima helps, and no minyan kavua helps. Before Shachris is much more of a Chamadik issa than before other mitzvahs. Now, the same is true regarding eating before a tainis. The Mechab and Tafkuf Samach Dalet, Sif Aleph says if you want to wake up early and eat before a tainis, before Alois, you're allowed to eat. I'm eating on a tainis? No, you're eating on not Asar B'Tevis, you're eating basically on Tes B'Tevis. Now, the big question is, when is exactly Alois on a practical level? And what makes this more of a question, someone told me, probably around just about 2 weeks ago, it was Erev Asara B'Tevis, and he wanted to wake up and eat. So he called up the Zmanim hotline and said, when is Alois? And they have 2 Zmanim for Alois. Now, what does that mean? 2 Zmanim for Alois? Isn't there 1 Zman? So again, I told you, we're not going to be confusing, we're going to be hopefully very clear. There is 1 Zman for Alois that basically is a standard Zman, and that is, the Cheshbon is 72 minutes before Netz is Alois. Regardless of time of year, of location, 72 minutes before the Netz is Alois. And that's why, today, tomorrow, got to the whole last week, the Zmanim are the same. Netz is 7:20, and Alois is 6:07. Of course, it's a half a minute that we have to approximate, but it's approximately 72 minutes before Netz standard. Now, there is a shita in Paiskim, a very significant shita, that says this is unreasonable. How could Alois HaShacha, which is the Metzias, be standard? Alois HaShacha depends on the Mailois, on where you're located, on the time of the year, on the location. And that's why the Lefi HaMailois is always earlier. The Alois is always earlier, between 15 and 20 minutes earlier than the standard Alois that we know it. Now, I say the word standard, maybe that's the wrong word. I could just say that in America, until recently, there was always 1 Zman Alois, and there's Achtos and others endorsed that Alois, 72 minutes before Netz. But in recent years, there's a big resurgence of the early Alois. So now I think in all Luchais they have 2 Alois. Because basically, we can't be machriya, but there are strong arguments that really in both directions. So basically, if had tomorrow been a tainis, or today been a tainis, so you have to eat before either 5:52, which is the early Alois, or 6:07. If you want to have a Suda, half hour before the Alois. So we're going to be politically correct. You have to keep a cheshbon of your Alois, be'itai uvizmanoi, whatever your minig is. But again, these are the 2 basic shitas of Alois. Someone asked me a very good question. He heard about 2 Alois. He said, you know what? Don't tell me the lumdus. Just tell me which is the kula. I like kulas. Tell me which is the kula. So first of all, we don't shop for kulas. But the truth is, the whole question is a toyis, because there's no such thing as a kula regarding Gizman, and I'll prove it. Because regarding eating before a tainis, so the early Alois is a chumrah. It's 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. But we'll soon see regarding the early davening, the earlier Alois is a lifesaver. It could be 20 minutes early. Those that have to run to work, 20 minutes earlier. So it's not a kula or a chumrah. Learn the sugya and decide your be'itai ubezmanim. Now, Lamaisa, someone told me something very interesting, that there's a minig in some shuls that before they give you an aliyah on a tainis, a sar b'tevis primarily, they will ask, did you eat before the tainis? And the answer is yes. Could we know when you ate? Why? If you ate after the first alais before the second alais, they won't give you an minyan. They won't give you an aliyah. Because halacha is if you ate on a tainis, you can't get an aliyah. Now they are convinced that the first alais is right. So you want to hold like the second alais, it's a free country, you can do what you want. But as far as we're concerned, the first alais is correct. And they won't give you an aliyah if you ate after the first alais. So if you want an aliyah that morning, you got to be careful where you daven and when you eat. But my point only is both minhagim, both shittas of alais have a firm basis in halacha, like everything else of Yiddishkeit. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chai. The next halach is interesting, I think, for this type of olam. It's a good news. There is a halach in Shulchan Aruch based on a Gemara. This is in Peites, Siv Beis, that there's an issa to greet, to give shalom before davening. The Shulchan Aruch says really to say good morning, tzafadam or a tav is okay, but even that try to avoid it because you're going to daven. You should first focus on davening. Rather, we see from the Shulchan Aruch that because it came the time to daven, don't greet. In other words, the implication is that otherwise you greet people. The Mishnah says in Brachas, the 9th parak, you're allowed to be magdim shalom, to say shalom aleichem b'shem Hashem, because greeting another yid is with tzayne shalmaka. I'm afraid some people are goyza holy not to greet someone atu before davening, but the Shulchan Aruch says you don't have to do that. You're allowed to greet someone until it comes time for davening. The good news really is if someone is out in the streets early morning, at this time of the year, it's extremely common. If you're in the streets at 5 o'clock, 5:30, you're allowed to say tzafadam or atav, you're allowed to say good morning, you're allowed to say shalom aleichem, because the issa of greeting is no different than the issa of eating before davening. And before alois, here you don't have to have a half hour, before alois, you're allowed to lechatchil say avar shalom aleichem, because again, it's not yet time for davening. I am greeting before davening. No, you're greeting after Ma'ariv. That's the way we look at it. You're greeting late at night. The next question that people ask is about activity. I would say that we're doing malacha, but going to work is one example. But some people like to take a shower before davening. Now, if the shower is v'tzarech tefillah, allowed to take a shower before davening. But let's assume he doesn't need it for davening, but he wants to go to work earlier. He wants to shower, shave, do all his activity before davening. Or exercise. People find the best time is in the morning. So any type of activity that is not a tzarech tefillah, showering included, is also before davening. The question is, if I'm up early enough, am I allowed to do all those activities before davening? And the answer basically in Peites Siv Gimel, Mr. Siv Katan Yud Zayin, is the same. If indeed it's before alois, then you're allowed to do activities because it's not yet before davening. The Mishnah recommends if you do these activities, say brachas before, that adds a little more of a priority. But basically, to do any activity that is not done after alois hashacha because it's before davening, you're allowed to do before alois. And again, which alois do you go with? That's your option. But if you go with let's say the standard alois, so before 6:07 you can take a shower and do exercise, or the early alois 5:52. But basically, it's totally in alois. Now we begin the actual davening part of the day. Really, the first activity that every yid around the globe does, we wash negel vasa. Now you wash negel vasa, it's a mitzvah, and you make a bracha. The question for the early birds that wake up early is an interesting question. Because we know we wash negel vasa in the morning because of the fact that our hands are scanius. Throughout the night you might have touched a covered place of the body, an unclean place of the body. So you have to wash your hands al tznikiyas. But there's another reason you wash your hands, because the ruach ra that settles on a person at night, and to get rid of the ruach ra, we have to wash our hands. The question is, when does that ruach ra come? When is that really prevalent? So either it's because you slept at night, so when you woke up, you want to wash off that ruach ra, but there are shittas and rishonim that the ruach ra comes by alois. When the day leaves us, the night leaves us, the new day begins, then that ruach ra settles in. So for those that wake up after 7, so there's no problem. You wash your hands once and you're fine. But someone that woke up to learn a shir, behelaga, b'mashkime, beis hamedrash, and they wake up 5 o'clock, they wash neglavasa, very good. But then it comes Alois, 6:07, 5:52, you should have to wash again, because the new day is starting. And this is the suffix, the Mechaber in Siman Dalet, Sif Yud Dalet, Yesh l'stapek, if you have to wash your hands a second time. When? Sagt the Mishnah Berurah, by Alois Amoid HaShachar, because since that's the new day lahalacha, you have to wash a new time just for the new start of a day. Now we understand why it's Tali and Alois. For this, you don't have to be guys away till nets because you might make it too early. This is not like davening or mila. So for this, the chumrah to wash a second time is by Alois HaShachar. Now this is very difficult when you're learning and you don't want to all of a sudden start having a washing break. Everybody should stop learning. Or when you're Shavuos morning when you're learning and it comes Alois, you have to stop that moment. This is also negay for those that say slichas early morning. Do they have to stop by the crack of dawn, by Alois to wash their hands? So Rav Shlomo Zalman in the Halichos Shlomo Rosh Hashanah Aleph Vav says that it's only a chumrah, it's enough to wash your hands after you finish learning or after you finish saying slichos, that's good enough. I saw the same thing, the Tshuvas on Hagis, Aleph Dalet and Beis, and he proves this conclusively. Had it been an halacha, so you have to stop. But it's only a chumrah. No, for that, when you finish learning, when you finish saying slichos, you wash your hands once again, and then you're ready to daven. If someone forgot, it's not the end of the world, it's only a suffix of the Mechaber. And I should add, if someone washed his hands approximately 5:55, so you could rely on the early Alois, that he already washed it after Alois, because Alois today was 5:52. But basically, the washing the hands is a product of our sugya, because Alois begins a new day. Now, this confused bacha that asked me, he was up for the first time at 5 o'clock in the morning, he was going to Lakewood for a bris, he was sitting in the car, could he learn, did he have to make brachas HaTorah? This is probably the easiest of all shaylas. Saying brachos has nothing to do with the day break actually beginning. Brachos is your new day. You slept for the night, you're waking up, it's a new excitement, lasik b'divrei Seira, a new tefillah v'harevna Hashem aleikeinu divrei Seirascha, a new shevach hashabach habanu. It's not totally in a new day, it's a new day of Avodas Hashem. So if you went to sleep and you had a night's sleep and you woke up to start a new day of Avodas Hashem, you can make all the brachas. Now we call it Birchos HaShachar, but it's not totally in morning, it's totally in a start of your new day. And indeed, the Shulchan Aruch in Mem Zayin Yud Gimel, based on a Tshuvas Harash in the beginning of Klal Dalid, when you woke up to a new day, you make all the brachos, kol hasei ha-brachos. In other words, davening is totally a new day. We'll soon see talis and tefillin, but Birchos HaShachar is your start of the day, even though it's be'emtza halayla. You wake up 3 in the morning, you can make all the brachos. Why? It's true. I'm starting my new day. I'm not a guy. The one exception the Mechaber adds is the bracha of Anois Masech Vivina. Because that is when the rooster crows, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, even the rooster, pastis, is asleep. I don't know what they're doing, but they're not crowing. So therefore, you can't make that bracha. But it's interesting, the Mishnah Berurah brings the Magen Avram, the Goyin, the Pichodesh, all say even that you could make. It's still before the rooster crows. Zok the Chayadim in the beginning of Klal Ches, the brach is not on me and now, the brach is Menhagis Shalaylam. And since the Baruch Shalom created a rooster that wakes us up, I'm making a brach on that. It's no different than Leilenu Asuma makes a brach of Bekeach Ivrim, even though he doesn't see. It's Menhagis Shalaylam. So the Mishnah Berurah does say, quoting Chayadim, if you already heard the rooster crow, you can make the bracha. If you didn't, it's kedai to wait until Alois HaShachar. But I would add, if someone's afraid that he makes all the brachas, he's going to forget to say Anois Masech Vivina, the mi'ikad the din, most paiskim, and the Goyin and Ma'aserav says this clearly in Sif Zayin, you could falazach on the shitas that the brachas, including Anois Masech Vivina, is mana, the man is any time that you wake up. Now, you're wondering, wait a minute, but I remember Shavuos morning's a whole hassle about making Birchas HaTorah. Why is it different? There's this pasuk. Shavuos morning, you didn't sleep all night. So maybe the bracha continues even into the next day. But if you had a night's sleep, so your day ended. When you wake up, your new day of Avodas Hashem begins, regardless of if it's the actual day of Alois Hashachar. The next question is, when is the earliest time for Karbonis? So some will say Karbonis, I don't say it on a regular day, I have to worry about it in the early days, but we say Karbonis, we follow the Shulchan Aruch. When is the earliest time to say Karbonis? So this is mamash a beautiful nafkamina. Until today, we would say, what's the shayla? Karbonis? That's like Birchas Hashachar. In fact, in davening, brachas, Karbonis, and then you have Plugah de Zimra. So it's like one package. But you see the Shulchan Aruch said you're allowed to say all the brachas, except for Nisan Zachavina, and Parshas Tamid don't say until it's Alois Hashachar. Why? How could there be an earliest time for Karbonis? Very pashut. If you're saying Kilu Krafti Tamid, but they were Makav the Tamid in the middle of the night, and that's why the Shulchan Aruch here and early in Siman Aleph Sivav, Parshis Karbonis Layoima Ella B'Yoim. Why? Zakt Mishtabura De'ena Karbonis Kravim Ella B'Yoim. Parshas Kiyah, Trumas Hadesha, and you could say before the day. But Karbonis that were brought by day, you have to wait until the day begins to say Karbonis. The Mishtabura in Memzayin Lamed Beis says even the Mishnayos about the Karbonis, if they're b'makom the Karbonos, don't say it until it's at least Alois Hashachar. Now this reminds me of the Minig Yisrael, Mizmor L'Soida, we don't say Erev Pesach and Chol HaMoed Pesach. Why? Because that Karban Toida was not brought, so we don't say it. And that's why Lamaisa Karbonos should be said after Alois Hashachar. The Pri Megadim in Mishptais of Sivkot and Vav add, if you have no choice, you're allowed to say it, better than nothing. What I found interesting, I saw the Yisrael Vazmanim, his page Lamed Aleph has interesting shayla. Let's say someone's davening in an early minyan, and he can't wait till Alois, and he's saying on the Pri Megadim. So he says Karbonis. Should he say the Hirat sign, Kilu Krafti, if it's too early? So Pashtus, that's already pushing it. You can't be Makav the Karban, so don't say Hirat. But then he says the Cheshbin, we're in Chutz La'aretz, we're saying Hiratzein. Eretz Yisrael is a different man, and Australia is a different man. So it's not the Mia now, it's my Karbonos as if I brought it. So what's so bad if I say it a little earlier? I'm at a Kohen, and if I'm living in Australia, it's not Eretz Yisrael time, and America's not Eretz Yisrael time. The Teretz says you could rely on the Karbonos being the Malkum Karban. So he even considers you could even say the Hiratzein if need be before this man. The next question is a little more challenging, and what's the earliest time to put on talis? So the emes is, contrary to public opinion, there's no pasuk that tells us this man for tzitzis. The Rambam in Hilchos Tzitzis Perek Gimel Lacheches, me'emes ha'mevarech aleh b'shacha. When do you make the bracha on talis? Mishayaker ben tcheles sheba l'lavan sheba. This is the newsman, not Alois and not Netz. This is man that's called Mishayaker. In other words, Alois Hashachar basically is dark. Netz is quite light. But there's a time in between that it's fairly light. And I could see the difference between white tzitzis or blue tzitzis. The Gemara gives a mashrik, you see a friend that you're not so familiar with, an acquaintance that you don't really have too much shaykhs, and you could differentiate, you could see who he is. So that's not the darkness of Alois, but it's not the light of Netz. It's in between, somewhere in between. Frek the Beis Yosef, where did the Rambam get the Shir Mishayaker? Well, soon the Gemara says it regarding Tefillin, but Lagabi Talis, says the Beis Yosef, maybe since Krishma's Tali and Mishayaker, and Krishma has tzitzis in it, maybe it's like Krishma. But the Rambam says the Shir of tzitzis is Mishayaker. But the Mordechai in Megillah Tov Saf Aleph says, since the Torah says, Re'isa Moisai, Re'ia Talya Milsa, so even a Moed Hashach is enough. Even though Moed Hashach is quite dark, but you could see something. You don't have to differentiate between Tcheles and Lavan. As long as you could see tzitzis, it's also enough. And that's a tremendous kula. That this man of tzitzis is not Mishayaker, but actually Alois Hashachar. How do we paskin? So in Siman Yud Ches Siv Gimel, the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rambam, to make a bracha on tzitzis, you have to wait to the Shir Mishayaker. The Ramah says, if you put it on Alois Hashachar, Yesh Oimrim, you can make a bracha, v'chein oihagim. So we'll soon see the exact details, but it's a machlokes if you could start alois or you have to wait till Misha Yakir. The Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot and Yud quotes many paiskim not to rely on the zman of alois for tzitzis, wait until Misha Yakir. In other words, really we should wait for tzitzis Misha Yakir. There's a yashayim, you could do it by alois hashachar. What is Misha Yakir? So again, we're not confusing anybody, but this could be probably a nice few minutes of a shir. Basically, to make a very long story short, Rav Henkin Zechayna Levracha, one of the Gdolei Paiskim in America, and the Kaf HaChaim Sivkot Yud Ches says the Minig Yerushalayim also was like that. To Misha Yakir is an hour before Alois, before Nets. An hour before Nets. There are some shiurim that give the shir of 45 minutes before Nets. Rav Moshe Gradin Chelik Dalet Siman Vav has a big chumrah that the Misha Yakir, he said, he studied it, is 35 minutes before the Nets. In the Luchais, the typical Luchais, they have, let's say, today, tomorrow, 7:20 is Netz Achama, and they give the Misha Yakir as 6:26. So they make a cheshbon 54 minutes before the Nets. So again, it's your Misha Yakir be'itay uvizmanai, but it's not as late as Nets, and it's not as early as the Alois HaShachar. And that's why you'll see the different minhagim regarding early shachris. Now someone says, you must know, which I didn't know, the early minyanim are called affectionately terach's minyan. Now I don't know what's affectionate about being called terach, but I said, what's pshat? So he said that Avram woke up very early in the morning, so terach was even earlier. So I don't know why people that get up early are compared to terach, even after he did tshuva. I'd rather be a Avram Nika. So we'll call it the early terach minyanim, whatever it is. But you'll see the different minhagim. There are some shuls that will start davening an hour before the Nets. That's the 60-minute Misha Yakir. Some shuls will wait until 35 minutes to put on talis and tefillin. Lamaisa, someone asked me, Lamashal, he said he has a relative that works in construction in Manhattan. Now, in Manhattan construction, you have to be there 7 o'clock a.m. You want to daven a longer davening, gesund to hate, get a different job. But 7 o'clock you have to be there. So this is talking about a shasat chag. So then you could rely on the earliest zman of talis and of talis. Again, an hour before is the Misha Yakir to make the bracha. Now the Ramah continues in Siman Yud Ches Siv Gimel. If you put it on before Misha Yakir, could go in b'slichos. Let's say you have to put it on even earlier than Misha Yakir, even earlier than 6:20. So put it on. Don't make a bracha on it. When it becomes Misha Yakir at 6:20 or whatever Misha Yakir you go with, yemashmesh boy v'yivarech. Put it on as early as you want. There's no issur to put on talis in the night. The problem is the bracha. So put it on as early as you want. When it gets the time of Misha Yakir, then be mamashmesh the tzitzis. Now Mr. Berurah says mamashmesh the tzitzis, not the beged. You move the tzitzis. And Mr. Berurah in Siman Ches Sivkot and Chav Gimel says mishmash is like a quasi levisha. You want to make a bracha, but you have to put it on. So by shaking it, moving it, it's like you're putting it on again. Rather than Mateh Ephraim in Tafkuf Peyal Sif Yudal says something very reasonable. If you really want to do it right, then at 6:20 take off the talis and put it on again and make a bracha. But if for some reason that's not feasible, minimally you mamashmesh the tzitzis, Mr. Berurah says the strings, not the beged, and make the bracha. So then it's like you're putting it on a second time, and then the bracha is together with the levish. And again, some minyanim do this on a daily basis. There's a different minig which is based on the halacha of the Ramah and Nun Dalet Gimel. I'm not saying the Ramah says this minig, but he gives this idea. If you're davening too early and you can't put on talis and tefillin because it's still too early, start davening. When you get to Yishtabach, when you finish Yishtabach, there's a pause and you put on talis and tefillin. Why punt between Yishtabach and Yoitze? So that's what the Ramah is really referring to. That a hefsek in Psukkah de Zimra is a problem. A hefsek in Birchas Krishma is even a bigger problem. But in between Psukkah de Zimra and Krishma is the least hefsek. So if you have to make a break, you could start even, let's say, 6:10, Psukkah de Zimra, 6:05. 6:20, there's a break. Talis and you put on talis, so soon as it's tefillin also. And I should mention, just say the bracha, don't say all the l'shem yichuds or whatever, because that might be a hefsik. And then you can put on the talis, 620, and daven, then you make the bracha, mishayakir. This is as far as the talis is concerned. The tefillin is a little more challenging. Why is it more challenging? Talis and tefillin, the chayra, is together. So the earliest man for tefillin, grada, is more mefurish than tzitzis. Tzitzis is the Rambam's chiddush. Tefillin is the Beferish Gemara. Menachis daf lamed vav med beis. The Gemara says there's an issa to put on tefillin too early. Really midaraisa, you can wear tefillin at night. But because there's a chashash, you might fall asleep in tefillin. There's an issa d'Rabbanan to put on tefillin too early. There's no issa by talis. Tefillin is an issa d'Rabbanan to put on tefillin too early. What does it mean too early? What is this man? So this is the Gemara Brachas Daf Tesa Med Beis, where the Gemara is speaking about this man Krishma Mishayakir, and the Gemara says the tefillin is the same. In other words, tefillin is more mefurish than tzitzis. That this man, the earliest man for tefillin is Mishayakir. Not alais and not nets. Rabbi Yoina says, "Vos epis Mishayakir? Bishleim mit tzitzis." Says Reisa Moisei. So when Mishayakir is Toli and Re'iyah. But why should tefillin be Toli and Re'iyah? Zot Rabbi Yoina Pashit. The pasuk says, "V'ro kol amay haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra alechem." So therefore, both talis and tefillin are Toli and Mishayakir. But tefillin is a little more chomer, because tefillin is an issa d'Rabbanan when it's too early. And this is all in Shulchan Aruch Siman Lamed, Sif Aleph. The man of tefillin is Mishayiras Chaveira, that's Mishayakir, and Sif Beis, also Aniach Tefillin Balayla. So therefore, basically, talis and tefillin, this man is Mishayakir, but tefillin is an issa before Mishayakir. So whenever possible, you put on tefillin after Mishayakir, and you can make a bracha very comfortably. That's the ikizman. The Shulchan Aruch in Siv Gimel of Siman Lamed says actually a big cooler. If someone has to travel, he's traveling, he's walking or he's driving a horse, he's allowed to put on tefillin, listen to this, not only before Mishayakir, but even before Alois. How could you put on, it's night? So the Paiskim explain, Mr. Burr and Magen Avraham explain, that really miyikidin Laila's man tefillin. The reason why they ask it is you might fall asleep. But we're assuming no one's going to fall asleep when he's walking or driving a horse. So since he's busy with traveling, he won't fall asleep. You can rely on the ikadidin. The main issa is you might fall asleep. So here we have l'chayra very clear guidance. If a person could wait, the best thing is to put on by Mishayakir l'chatchil. If a person is in a terrible rush, he has to be at work at a time that he can't wait till Mishayakir. So Rav Moshe in Chelik Dalet Siman Vav says going to work, losing one's job, Ein Lecha Ein is Gadol Mizeh. You can rely on this Shulchan Aruch. You can put it on even before Mishayakir. To make a bracha, you're not allowed to. So you put it on earlier, and it comes this man of Mishayakir, Memashmesh u'mevarech. Now there's an obvious question on this psak that Rav Moshe and others say that you can rely on the doichi of going to work to put it on earlier. Mr. Burr and Magen Avraham say the heta is because you're walking, because you're traveling, you won't fall asleep. But someone that woke up early and sitting in shul and davening, pardon me, there's a chance he might fall asleep. He woke up early. So the heta is because he can't fall asleep when he's walking, and here he's sitting in shul. So Rav Moshe doesn't mention this, I'm surprised. Could be Rav Moshe held that the heta really is at Laila's man tefillin. And he's davening, maybe in Achoshish, maybe Rav Moshe was saimach on the Teres HaKenim, which is on the page in Siman Lamed. The Teres HaKenim says, he takes exception to the Magen Avraham, even if you're not traveling, when Achoshish is going to fall asleep during davening. But Rav Moshe and others, and it seems that's the minig, when someone has a Shas Atchak, he can even put it on before Mishayakir, hopefully he won't fall asleep, and Mishayakir comes, even if he's holding Mishayakir after Shemoneh Esrei, whatever reason, he's davening very early, but to make a bracha after Mishayakir. I saw a mavaldik chiddush, hopefully he's never been a geya, but if someone, le'aleinu, is a chayla, whatever he has, going into surgery, and he cannot put on tefillin any time after the earliest zman of Mishayakir, or even Alois, he should put on tefillin before Alais without a bracha. Because it's either then or never. But the question is, what is he gaining putting on at night? You rely on the deraisa that Laila's man tefillin. So you won't make a bracha, but that's better than nothing. But it's only in the case when it's better than nothing. The next question, and moving on to davening, is Psukat Zimra. Now, to us, this should be simple. You know, Talis and Tefillah, Misha Yakir, and Christmas, Toli, and Mashesh, Manes, Toli, and Mashemesh. Psukat Zimra, the sky's the limit. What's the problem? You know, people that daven Netzach Cham or Rosh Hashanah, and they want to daven like a mensch, they want to have a long Psukat Zimra. So they want to stop Psukat Zimra very early. What could be wrong? And Takat Pima Godim, and Taf Reish Samach Dalid, and the Rashi's Mashmois in Yud Aleph Amud Beis, that there's no Zman for Psukat Zimra. I saw the Arches Chaim, the Spinka, in Taf Reish Samach Dalid, quoting the Marsham, points out that there's no early Zman. You could daven whenever you want. The hell is Shevach Vaidot to the Baishtam, is Toli in Zman. But the Pella is, there's a Maril in the Menhagim. In Amitaf Reish Pei Hei, he says the following story. It was once the Ishana Rabbah, and they thought it was a Moed HaShach. And again, in those days, they didn't have a clock, they didn't have a radio time, they didn't have phones, and they thought it was a Moed HaShach, and they thought it was already day, but it's really Lavon HaShem, they thought it was day, and they put on talis and tefillin, and they said Psukat Zimra, and they realized it was too early. Afterwards, the Maril realized that they had made a mistake, and it was geyser a tainis, because they put on talis and tefillin and said Psukat Zimra before the Zman. So, the Shari Tshuva in Taf Reish Samach Dal quotes this Maril. And the question is, what's Pshat? Not only is it wrong Psukat Zimra before Alois, but he was geyser tainis as a kapara. So, the Paiskim ask, what's wrong? The Pim Gadim asks, what's wrong? So, Rabbi Yankov Kamenetsky had a Mordika Einfall. Psukat Zimra is a form of Hallel. Hallel, the Gemara learns from a pasuk, "Mimizach shemesh ad mevoyim hulo shem Hashem." You say it Hallel by day, and that's why I saw a beautiful discussion in the Sefer Halichos Yisrael from Rav Taplin from Lakewood in Simon Memhei. He discusses all the different shittas regarding this question of saying Hallel before the Zman. But Lamaisa, there are enough poskim that hold that there is no Zman. Pim Gadim since told there's no Zman. The story of the Maril. So the Kleisenberg and the Vayatziv Aleph Kuf Ches says that the Maril was guys at times because they put on talis and tefillin too early. And he just threw in Psukat Zimra. But the Ikka is talis and tefillin is the problem. So we could say again, if you go wait for Psukat Zimra, Talois Hashacha, Tave Lecha Bracha, but we can't say it's an Issa before Alois. There are enough poskim that hold that there is no earliest man for the Psukat Zimra. The next question, as far as Krishma is concerned, Krishma is a deraisa. So Krishma is not Alois and not Netz. Krishma is the Mishnah in Brachas Daf Tes. It's totally Misha Yakir. So whatever your Misha Yakir is, as I state in the Shulchan Aruch Siman Nun Ches Sif Aleph, you say Krishma. And that's also presumably the time of Bikumecha. That's when people wake up. The problem that we have is we are davening Netz. Netz is 7:20, Vasikin, and Mishiyaki is 6:20. What do? I can't say Krishma 6:20 and Shmeres is 7:20. So this is what the Shulchan Aruch is discussing in Nun Ches, that there's a gewaltige Meile in davening Vasikin. The Gemara in Brachas, Daf Tes Amud Beis says the Meile of it, and the Gemara says Rabbeinu once made Vasikin and he was smiling a whole day, and the Shulchan Aruch says Schari Harbei Ma'oid, and Mufti Mishnah says it's a muftach that is a Ben Olam Haba. So there's definitely a big mile in davening with the Netz, which is Vasikin. And if you are Zaycha to daven Vasikin, you're allowed to delay Krishma from Mishiyakir, say it shortly before Netz, so you can be Zaycha to the mitzvah of Vasikin. And that's why Taka, Vasikin, will be a shir for itself, it's a whole sugya. But those that daven Vasikin, Tavalei and Bracha, they should smile a whole day and be happy a whole day. But they push off Krishma from the optimum zman of Mishiyakir to be able to complete the Vasikin davening the way it's supposed to. But the question is, for those that have to daven in the very early minyan, so here the Shulchan Aruch in Nun Ches Sif Gimel says a big kula. If you're an Oynis, you're allowed to say Krishma with the brachis from a Moed HaShachar. In other words, if a person has to go to work, like we said, and he has to daven in one of these early minyanim, he's allowed to push off daven early, much earlier. According to our Moshe, you're talking about a big difference. So you see, Krishma does have flexibility. This man is Misha Yakir, you're allowed to go up to Lalois, and people push it off until Netz. The Machab again says in Sif Dalet, if you lamed it too early, as long as it's after Alois, you're Yaitza Krishma. Birchais Krishma is a problem. The Machabas, you're allowed to say Brachais and Krishma from Alois. So up to Magen Avraham, it doesn't make sense. Yaitza Ma'orais, when it's still dark outside, it's inappropriate. And the Magen Avraham insists, and the Mishnah Berurah and Sif Katan Yotes quotes the Prima Godim and other Paiskim, not to say Brachais, Birchais Krishma, Yaitza Ma'orais, before Misha Yakir. And that's why it's, when at all possible, it's not Kedai to daven Krishma and the Brachais before Misha Yakir. As far as the Krishma is concerned, the Machab is Mekel. Brachais is a Machlekes Mechaba and Magen Avraham, and most Paiskim favor the Magen Avraham's Chumrah to wait for Birchas Krishma until Misha Yakir. The real question is, when is the earliest time for Shemay Nesr? Halavai, many Yidden think, Halavai I could daven by Vasikin, but I have to be at work, I have to travel, whatever it is, people, the Tarchei Amchi Yisrael Merubim, people cannot wait until Vasikin. It's not Shaykh. So Lamaisa, we would say, well, why not Alois? But the problem is that Shemay Nesra, Shulchan Aruch learns, the Gemara learns, Yerucha im HaShemesh. Shemesh has one-on-one meaning, and that is Netz. So the ideal time, the optimum time is davening by Netz. Who said earlier is even an option? But then again, the Paiskim say that there is an option. And to daven early, what's the cheshbon? So I'll tell you a Dava Nifla, the Steichemed in Chele Gimel, page 345 on, he quotes from the Aderes and other Paiskim that said a novel Yisoid. Really, the Zman for all mitzvahs is really Alois. But since we don't have a watch, we don't have the time, make it by nets. The Aderes had a problem in his city that there were not enough Dalet Minim on Sukkot. And people wanted to make a bracha, say halal. The only eight would be to have continuous minyanim, and they would, juggle the Dalet Minim from minyan to minyan. And they made davening before nets by Alois. How can you daven after Alois? It's not the Zman. Mishnah says you have to wait till nets for all mitzvahs, including davening, l'chayra. The Aderes said a Mardik Chiddush. Since today, in his times, we have watches and accurate clocks, the halacha changes. But the Steichemed quotes many others that can't be. This is a takana of a Mishnah. How do you change a takana of a Mishnah? The Marsham in Chelik Aleph Siman Aleph also rejects that. So that seems to be, sensible, but it's not acceptable. What is acceptable is the Shulchan Aruch in Peites Aleph says this man is Netzachama, but there's a Mordika but here. Really, we daven Shachris Keneged the Korban Tamid. When was the Korban Tamid brought? Mishaheya Pnei HaMizrach. Zok the Shulchan Aruch, if you daven before the nets, as long as it's Heyer Pnei HaMizrach, it's also good. Why? Just like the Korban. Now, when is Heyer Pnei HaMizrach? So the Pais can point out, the Megadim says it's not klar, but it's definitely long before nets. It's in between Alois and Mishayakir. That means, if you want to be makeable, in between 72 minutes before nets or 60 minutes. So the Pais can say, in that time, you could say for sure, if you daven Shemay Nesr by Mishayakir, which, let's say, if you go with the sheet of 60, you're good to go. You're okay. But before we put this Lamaisa, I must tell you something that's very mistavra. The Prichodash in Siman Peites says, wait a minute. If the Shachris corresponds to the Korban Tamid, so why isn't Mishaheya L'chatchila? Nets, Zok the Prichodash and Naval Yisoid. The right time L'chatchila for Shemay Nesr is Mishaheya or our Mishayakir. But there's a Maila of nets, als nets. But it can't be that Mishaheyer is a b'diavad if that's the time for the Korban. And there are some Paiskim that go with this Pri Chadash. Rabbi Yakov Zev in the Tshuvas also develops this theme in Chelik Aleph Siman Beis. So I could say that ideally one should try to daven Shachris by Netzach Chama, have the Ma'ila Vasikin. If he has to daven early, there are enough shittas that say Heya Pnei HaMizrach is an option. In fact, some say it's even Lechatchila. But even if you don't go with the Pri Chadash, but it's definitely an option mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. Now, the problem with davening too early is that you have a problem with the tefillin. But if you wait till the Zman of Mishiyakir, you could put on talis and tefillin with the bracha and daven Shmei Nesr. For those that daven early every day because they have to go to work, I should mention, when you have a day off, you're not going to work, or when you retire, then go back to the optimum Zman. Don't forget, the early Zman, you had a head to do it because you're running to work, but if you're not going to work that day, go back to the regular Zman. There was a time in America, it was Tafshin Lamed Aleph, if you remember it, with the energy crisis, that the latest, that the Netzach Chama was as late as 8:20. In England, for whatever reason it was, in Tafshin Chavches, the Netz was even later. So there are a number of Jews, Moshe Chayil Dal Siman Vav, the Chesheva Ephoi, the Padova in England, Beis Kuf Mem Gimel and on, Rav Zalman Sorotzkin, Maznaim La Mishpat Siman Gimel, that discussed if you're allowed to daven even before Alois. Now for us, it's unthinkable. But you just know, if you want to look into the Sugi more Barichis, there was a question when the Netz was 8:20. So Alois was, let's say, 7:05. And 7:05 people have to be at work already. So if you have to dip below Alois, Ayin Sham V'Timtza. But I want to be clear that the davening early is not ideal. If you have to do it, so that's what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. The Mishnah Berurah in the beginning of Peites says, if you wake up early for Slichas, that's very nice. But don't start davening too early. The importance of saying Slichas is not mata davening too early. Rather than the same Mishnah Berurah quotes a Prima Godim and Tov Tzadik Dalid, that if you're up a whole night Shavuos morning, you're allowed to daven before Netz. Now, why is that different than Slichas? Teretz is Pashat. Slichas you woke up early, but Shavuos you're up a whole night. So, according to the Prima Godim Mishnah Berurah, you could daven Shavuos morning earlier than we daven. But I guess Yisrael Kedoshim, I have not seen a Shavuos minyan that davens Shmei Nesr before Netz. Well, I should mention just a few more hours. This is the Gei Mamish for tomorrow. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh Shvat. The Marsham, in that Shuvah they wrote to the Aderes regarding the minyanim that have to juggle, he says Hallel should be not before Netz. Mimizrach Shemesh ad Mevoye. So that means tomorrow, if you daven early every morning because you have to go to work, you shouldn't say Hallel before 7:20. Now, for many people, that's wishful thinking. I have to be at work. I have to leave shul at 7 o'clock. But the Marsham says, but Hallel could be more common than anything else. I saw the Rav in Tov Peiches Siv Gimel, of course doesn't mention the Marsham, he's before the Marsham, but he says that Hallel is like other mitzvahs, say it by nets, but b'diavad amoid hashacha. So he seems not to say Hallel is different than any other zman. If someone asks me a question, he has to go to work, he has to travel, to catch a flight, he could either daven before the nets and rely on the early zman, and he'll daven with the minyan, or daven after the nets at work b'yechidus, which is better. So I think the answer should be clear. We never forfeit tefillah b'tziba unless there's mamish no other choice. And here there's a choice. You could tefillah on Klal Yisrael that after Heya Pnei HaMizrach or after Mishiyakir, that's a time for davening, especially like the Pri Chadash after Mishiyakir is Lachatchila. So Avada before the nets, minyan after the nets b'yechidus, daven before the nets with minyan. After the nets, I could daven, Shmei Nesr with the nets, it'll be perfect, but I have to leave before laning. If I daven in the earlier minyan, I could stay till the end of davening. Now that's a trickier question, but then again, for a yid to miss laning on a regular basis, to walk out of shul before laning, oizi Hashem yichlu, so it's a good question, but in Mustavra is don't be oiker part of davening every day. If you have to do it, daven with the Pri Chadash Shita, daven after Mishiyakir, and you're okay. Someone had this shaila that I mentioned at the beginning. He has to work in America from 3 to 10. He has an hour davening break. When should he daven? Now this is a tricky question. He was thinking of davening with the nets. Right? It's very good. He'll be Yotzei Nets every day. But that means he'll start davening, let's say, 6:30. Actually, the next minyan probably is like 7 o'clock, probably close to that, right? 7 o'clock. Well, that was 7 o'clock. They go from 7 to 8. But the problem is he's working after Alois from 6:05 to 7. He's working Be'issa. Don't forget. Or 5:52. But he wants to be a tzaddik and daven by nets. That's great. But he's working an hour plus before Malacha. So I saw Rabbi Yashiv is quoted in Tefillah Kilchasa Gimel Harasamach Gimel, not Lagabi this Shaila Mamish, but Lagabi this type of Shaila. And he says the best eitzah is daven the earliest man. Because Issa Malacha before davening is a Chamadik Issa. So Al Tiyat Tzadik Harbe, daven with the earliest Zman that people are davening, with the Mashiacher, and you're okay. And last but not least, I should mention when a person's in any situation that Tefillah B'tzibur is difficult. Lamosh is catching a flight and he can't daven too early, and when he gets to his destinations after the Zman, he wouldn't daven after the Zman, or he's having a surgery, or he's traveling and there is no minyan. In any situation that a person is unable to be part of a minyan, the eitzah is find out when netz is and daven b'yechidus with the netz. Don't forget, the Mishnah Berurah says if someone is ruggle every day to daven with the netz, he's allowed to daven even b'yechidus. Now that's only if you're ruggle. If someone just decides to daven one day with netz, then find the minyan. But in extenuating circumstance, when a person cannot be part of a minyan, it's always kedai to connect with the netz. Today it's a phone call away, and then you could daven with that, and that's almost like davening with minyan. A guten Tag and a guten Rishchaydish.
Shem Egan Shir Torah, like to give a big yashikar to Smith for today's inspiring shir, informative shir. I'd like to give a big yashikar to Simcha Cohen for sponsoring today's shir, Lili Nishmas, Imai, Yishareza Bas Masan Alevi La Shalom. Today's shir is also Lili Nishmas, Yishar Miriam Brian Bas La Shalom. Boys, I'd like to remind Olam that Egan Shir Torah's ongoing Shovavim Shiurim program is going on. Massive expenses are being incurred to promote Tarosan or Kedushasan Shal Yisrael. Whoever would like to have a great schus, in the schus of a mitzvah, come forward. There's a credit card machine, there's a receipt book, checks can be written to Egan Shir Torah. Shekach Rav Chananya ben Akashemer, Lot Zakarish Bochel Zakes, this is Shul Fig Hiram Torah Mitzvah Shenem Al Lenech Hofetz Aman Tzidkoi, Yagdol Torah V'Yada. Seek him 5 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Okay, that's true. Okay, that's true. It's a good
Can't stop pausing.
Ask it.
But if the exercise gives you more pleasure to
Hope then you're allowed. Okay, then you
I hope not.
try.
Maybe for food also, maybe if we
Wenn es passiert im Tipp, man das heute
With exercise, yeah.
am schon aber einfach von hier. Wenn ich so Wochen
Okay.
gleichzeitig essen kann,
Boys say it's early enough to seek him today's share
Seeking.
after the earliest months before the last month. So everyone, please listen to the Sikkim today's share from Smith. Shh. Just take a few minutes.
Just a short summary, learn to Bez Hashem. The halachic day begins by Alois, but mitzvahs begin by Netz b'derech klal. As the Rashi explains, because people were not aware of the time exactly, precisely, they confused the Ora Lavana with the Ora Chama or any other problem, but basically the mitzvahs we begin by Netz. But more appropriately, we could say that a mitzvah really depends on each particular mitzvah. The day begins by Alois, but as we'll see, each mitzvah has its own set of halachas. Before Alois is still night. It's not early morning, it's late at night. That's why you're allowed to eat before Alois. You're allowed to do malacha, activity, working, showering, exercise. You're allowed to greet, even Shalom Aleichem, even though it's before davening, but it's still not the new day. Once it became Alois, you have to stop eating, even if you start a beheta. There are some times that a person has to eat more than just a snack. You have to start a half hour before Alois, but basically, the Alois is the cutoff point. That's when the day begins. The eating before a tainus also depends on Alois. We explained there are two Alois. One is a 72-minute fixed man before Netz, and one is depending on the Mailois, depending on a person's location and time of the year. We'll check the Luach. But ideally, when it comes, the a person, even though he washed Negelvasa in the morning, he should try to wash a second Negelvasa by Alois. You don't have to stop learning or saying Slichas, but if it's a good idea after share, before you put on Talis and Tefillin to start davening, to go and wash your hands again, and that will be Yaitze that Chumr. All brachas can be said anytime. Anois and Sech Vivina, the Shulchan Aruch recommends not to, most Paiskim Mamekel, but definitely other brachas besides Anois Sech Vivina, Lachatchil, you're allowed to say it anytime you wake up, after a night's sleep. It's only Shavuos that we didn't sleep that we have issues. Karbanas should be said, at least the Karban Tamid should be said after the Zman of the Akrava, and too early is not good. Talis is Mishiyakir, not before. No bracha should be said before Mishiyakir. And the two options, either if you want to have to put it on before the Mishiyakir, put it on, and then when it comes Mishiyakir, you Mashmesh, or take it off and put it on again. Or some people don't put on Talis Tefillin at all until Mishiyakir, and then in between Yishtabach and Yaitza, they'll put it on and make a bracha during the davening between Pesukei Zimra and Birchas Krishma. There are different shitas when Mishiyakir is, as we said, Be'ita Uvazmana, Yom Mishiyakir, then you could put on Tefillin and Talis with a bracha. Tefillin is the same thing. If someone is an Einis, we said he could put it on much earlier, but the bracha should not be said before the time of Mishiyakir. If someone is rushing to work, he could rely on the Zman and the early Zman of Alois. That's certainly true. But basically, to keep the Zmanim, the Gabi, all of halachas. Pesukei de Zimra, many Paiskim Mamekel, anytime you want. Some say only after Alois. Krishma is definitely tali in Mishiyakir. Birchas Krishma is also, of course, tali in Mishiyakir. The question is, someone has to say Krishma before Mishiyakir. So the Shulchan Aruch is makel with the brachas, and the Magen Avram and many places, brachas should not be said before Mishiyakir. The Krishma is Mishiyakir, but since there's a Gevaldige Mile in davening with the Netz Vasikin, you're allowed to delay Krishma from Mishiyakir until Netz, to be able to daven Shmoneh Esrei with the Netz. Shmoneh Esrei should be said ideally from the Yeruchem Hashemesh with Netz. If there's an Einis, a person could say it earlier, Lechatchila, at least the Pichada says it, but certainly B'di'eved or B'shas Atchak, Misheheya Pnei HaMisach, which we assume we could be Saimach that it's Mishiyakir and onward, you could daven Shmoneh Esrei, even though it's an hour or so before the Netz Achama. If possible, when you're not working that day or you're retired, go back to the Zmanim and keep the Zmanim. This heter of davening before Netz Shmoneh Esrei is basically only when a person has this daichik. Unless, of course, you're saimach on the Prichadash, that's the Lechatchila. Hallel should be said Lechatchila by Netz, but those that have to go to work and they have to say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh or Chanukah, whatever it is, if there's no choice and you rely that it's like other mitzvahs, that's Mana from Alois and Lechatchila by Netz. The minyan before Netz is better than davening after Netz b'yachidus, because there are enough to be saimach on, and you could therefore wait for a minyan. Before Netz or after Zman Tefillah, have either daven before the Netz, this way you also have the Zman Tefillah. If to leave before laning on a regular basis is not advisable, better daven before the Netz and finish the davening. And at any time that a person cannot make Tefillah b'tzibur, the eighth is to find out the Vasikin, Shmoneh Esrei with Vasikin, and that's almost like Tefillah b'tzibur.
Sure.